We talked a little bit about how relationships that are formed through the internet are actually really authentic. And I think that that's a really amazing thing, but it also shapes what gamers become comfortable with. Since they're used to being kind of seen for themselves and not judged based on their appearance or how much money they have or the color of their skin, when they do move out into the real world, they start to get exposed based on those qualities. And they can feel like they get judged very easily, and that can become really problematic. So a lot of times when people don't have a lot of friends online, they get used to kind of moving into a public area and being kind of scrutinized by other people, and you kind of get used to that scrutinization and that judgment. I think what happens with gamers is since they spend so much time online, that scrutiny starts to become really uncomfortable for them. And they start to lose confidence in who they are as a person. And I know that, we've talked a little bit earlier, but I know that a lot of you guys have trouble moving with confidence in the real world, whereas you feel so much more comfortable and so much more confident when you're behind a computer screen. And so the more time you spend behind a computer screen, the less confident you become in the real world. And that can really cause problems for relationships, especially romantic relationships. And one of the biggest problems that gamers have with romantic relationships is that gamers tend to give in order to get. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So let's say that you're a gamer and you spend a lot of time online, and then you're also a college student and you meet a girl and you think she's cute and you like her. But since you kind of don't have confidence, you sort of feel like, oh, you're not as attractive as some of the other dudes in the college, or you don't have quite as much money, or you don't dress as nice. And so you kind of see these deficiencies in yourself, and you're attracted to this girl. So what do you do as a gamer? You end up trying to level that playing field. In your mind, when you're dealing with the girl, you tend to think, oh, she's not going to, if I ask her out, she's going to say no. So what I need to do is I need to get her to like me more so that when I ask her out, she's going to say yes. So then what happens is a gamer usually starts out sort of being friendly, right? He doesn't ask her out at the beginning, but you start hanging out with her, and then you start doing stuff for her. Like if she needs a ride because it's raining or something like that, you give her a ride. When she has trouble like studying for things, you tutor her, you buy her meals, you start to be like this really nice guy. And you start to do things because you don't feel confident enough to ask her out. You start to do things for her. And all the while in your mind, this is towards this goal of getting her to like you. And so you're investing all of this stuff into this relationship with the hope that you're going to get something out of it. And so the help that you give her, the kind of kindness that you show her, has this ulterior motive, and if you guys are really honest with yourselves, you'll see that that's the case, of getting something back. And what happens then? She ends up dating someone else, and then you resent that guy, right? And then she calls you up one night, and she's like, oh, like, the guy that I'm dating, he's such an asshole. And then you listen to her talk about her boyfriend problems. And then this thought pops up in your mind, well, all of those things that are wrong with him are right with me. I wouldn't treat you like that. I'd treat you like gold. I'd respect you. And you start to think that, how can she not see that I'm the perfect person? Because I do all of this stuff for her, and her asshole boyfriend doesn't. And so then what happens is, at some point, all of this stuff that you've invested in the relationship and everything that you've kind of put into this relationship, all of the sacrifices you've made for her are kind of building up, building up, building up, and then you want something in return. And then what happens is you ask her out, right? You finally, you reach this point where you can't take it anymore, and you ask her out. And then what does she do? She says, no, I think of you like a friend, right? That's the line. I think of you like a friend. And this pisses gamers off to no end. It pisses the shit out of you, right? Because, you've been friend-zoned, and you guys hate that. And why is that so resentful? It's because you never wanted to be friend-zoned. And you invested so much into this relationship because you were afraid that she was going to turn you down at the beginning. And then you invest all of this time and this effort and this money into getting her to like you, and then she rejects you. And that rejection is so much more painful because you've invested so much. You spent the last year of your life taking care of this girl, and then she turns you down. And then that makes you really, really angry. hurts your self-confidence, causes a lot of gamers to be really resentful towards women, and causes a lot of the toxicity that we see online. And that toxicity, that hatred of women, comes from a sense of betrayal and a sense of regret and a sense of like an investment that you've lost. And so that's really, really toxic and really dangerous. And the worst thing about that is after this happens to you one time, you feel less confident in yourself and it becomes harder to ask out the next girl. So then what happens is you repeat the whole pattern. Because whereas before, she had a 20% chance of saying yes if you asked her out, now the next girl has a 10% chance because you've already been rejected once. And not only were you were rejected after you did so much for that girl. So the second time around, you're like, okay, now I have to do even more to get her to like me. And so the second time around, gamers invest even more. And what you guys do is then, you buy her flowers for Valentine's Day as a friend. And when she gets dumped by her boyfriend and stood up, you're there, you're the knight in shining armor, and you do everything for her. And so you invest and invest and invest in this relationship. But you're investing in it with sort of the idea of her being your girlfriend, but you never make that clear to her. And so she kind of thinks of you as a friend because you actually don't ask her out at the beginning, right? You're just like this nice guy, and you want her to see your value. And so that's really dangerous because you have to be careful about whether you're someone who gives to get. And if you're giving to get something in return, chances are that's going to end poorly and you're going to resent that person for it. Because in a sense, they don't know what you're doing, right? They just think that you're a nice guy. And that doesn't entitle you to anything, but it makes you feel entitled because in your mind, it's an investment and you're looking at for a return. If you're doing something out of the kindness of your heart, that's fine. But if you're really doing something out of the kindness of your heart, you shouldn't be expecting something in return. So one of the most dangerous patterns that gamers can fall into is this pattern of giving to get. And take a look at your interactions with women and see if that's actually what you do. Why are you so nice to them to begin with? Why do you buy them dinner and buy them gifts and spend so much time like finding this perfect piece of jewelry for a female friend of yours? It's because you've got feelings for her. If you've got feelings for her, why don't you ask her out? It's because you're terrified she's going to say no. And since you're terrified, you invest all this stuff, but that just leads to regret and it turns into hatred. And over time, the more that this happens, and I've seen this happen with a lot of you guys several times, each time it happens, it gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And then it's just really catastrophic. So one of the things that you guys have to understand about relationships is be honest with yourself about the way that you feel towards another person and be honest with them. And do it from the get-go. If they're going to reject you, they may reject you, and that's okay. But the chances that you invest something and then magically they're going to wake up one day and love you are actually really small. And I know it's painful to think about, but see if you fall into this pattern. Are you someone who gives to get? And if you are, does that have to do with confidence? And if it does have to do with confidence, the solution is not to give more. The solution is to work on your confidence. And a little bit later, we'll talk about how to do that.